I spent the last 30 days creating accessories for the Nintendo Switch 2 that currently don't exist, and I might have lost my mind in the process.
You don't even have to do too much. You can turn me on with just a touch, baby. I look around since city's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone. I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch.
Docked mode is great, cable spaghetti is not. So we found a way to get your Switch off your desk. With a fairly easy print, we found our solution. Oops. And although removing the supports was kind of a pain, it still came out really clean. This 3D printed bracket uses the VESA mounting holes in the back of your monitor or TV to hold the dock and hide the cables behind the screen. Installation is fairly straightforward. You just put a couple screws in, mount your dock, and you are ready to go. It doesn't change how the Switch works at all, it just gives you your desk back. And if you haven't tastefully decorated your dock with a 3D printed cover, it hides the whole setup. The VESA Mount cleaned up the space around my monitor, but I wanted to go one step further. I wanted the Switch 2 to disappear completely when I wasn't using it. And at the same time, I didn't want to contort my body into unnatural positions to shuffle behind the TV to dock it. It is quite inconvenient to go behind the TV to dock the Switch. So I designed this under-desk dock mount. The first prototype technically worked, but the angle was wrong and the dock stuck out just far enough that it caught me every time I tried to move around my desk. I went back into CAD, changed the angle, beefed up the thinnest section, and added better screw points, and the final version was ready to print and install. Final version tucks the entire dock and console completely out of view. From above, it just looks like a clean desk. And it appears to others that you are busy finishing all those reports for work or finishing up the taxes at home. Well, in reality, you are busy doing the most important task of all, finding that 1000th Korok seed in Tears of the Kingdom. This is actually a part of a bigger series that I'm working on. Instead of the classic ultimate productivity desk, I'm building the ultimate desk for getting absolutely nothing done and having a great time in the process. A desk that is aggressively bad at helping you get nothing done. Next up, the tiny arcade cabinet. There's a 3D printable enclosure that lets you slide the Switch 2 in, and suddenly it looks like a mini arcade machine you'd find in the corner of a pizza place in the 90s. The printed version is all plastic, bright, chunky, very Saturday morning cartoon energy, and honestly, that's kind of perfect for how it feels to play. But since the H2 can also run a laser module, I wanted to see what would happen if we gave this thing a glow up. I grabbed a laser cut file for a similar cabinet, cut it out of walnut plywood, and built a more grown-up version. Same Switch, same games, completely different vibe. The plastic one feels like it belongs in a kid's room. The wooden one feels like it belongs in a nice game room or tucked in the corner of a restaurant next to a tiny bowl of pretzels. Is it strictly necessary to have two different arcades for the same console? No. Does my brain absolutely insist they both need to exist? Yes. Yes, it does. When the Joy-Cons are detached, the Switch 2's internal connectors are just sitting there collecting dust, crumbs, and whatever else lives in your living room.
Hey, where'd you get that?
These printed dust covers snap over the rails and protect the Joy-Con attachment points. In our scientific testing, we found that 60% of the time they work. Every time. And of course, this list would not be complete without some cursory nod to the Gridfinity system that Zach Friedman invented.
If you have access to a 3D printer, you can copy and paste real-life objects to make as many as you want for mere pennies of filament.
It is the perfect way to organize the things that don't really need organizing. So of course we made a Switch 2 Gridfinity insert for one of my drawers. It holds Joy-Cons, cables, game cards, and, depending on how seriously you take your gaming snacks, maybe a dedicated slot for snacks. The Switch 2 is really good in handheld and docked mode, but there's a secret third form factor I kept wanting to use: portrait mode, like a mini pinball table or vertical arcade screen. The problem is that when you turn it vertically, the Joy-Cons can't attach, the kickstand doesn't work, and you end up leaning it against a mug or a stack of books and keep waiting for it to fall over. So we found this absolutely amazing 3D design. It holds the Switch in a proper vertical orientation at the right angle, and then gives you the side rails to interact with it, so it actually feels more like real pinball experience with the screen in the proper orientation. Nobody's ever going to mass produce a Switch 2 portrait pinball cradle for one very particular type of person, but now you can. You can make it at home, so enjoy. And as a total side note, we are actively working on redesigning another model for the Switch 2 that physically turns your Switch into the form factor of a pinball machine. The mechanisms on this are really clever because there are no electronics. It just repurposes the existing buttons to work with the external 3D printed ones. One of the smallest and easiest accessories to print happens to be one of the most useful, especially if you're careless and like to toss your Switch into your backpack. The problem is that if you just toss your Switch into the bag, there's a possibility that the little thumbsticks can get damaged in transit, so I found this little design that slots into the underside of the Joy-Con thumbsticks and locks them into place, so when you remove your Switch from your cluttered bag, the thumbsticks are as good as new. I give this 2 thumbs up. I remember as a kid playing video games and having my mom say to me, "You need to go outside and get some exercise." Joke's on you, Mom. I figured out a way to maintain peak physical condition by bypassing the more traditional means of doing cardio or exercising, all while remaining sedentary on the couch, binge playing Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. The question then was, how do we get about getting exercise while playing the Switch 2? Would it be some sort of attachment to a treadmill, kind of like a carrot for cardio? The idea being that you keep the reward just out of reach and let basic motivation do the rest. In theory, that should translate to a normal running motion, but the moment your attention shifts to the game, the whole system starts to break down, and what feels like a full sprint starts to look like you're an extra from the Pirates of the Caribbean. So maybe something a little bit more controlled. Sit-ups? Keep the Switch stable, isolate the movement, but in practice this doesn't really hold up either. Ultimately, my design team and I landed on the idea of hulking out by redesigning the classic dumbbell, you know, these things, by creating a custom insert to which the Joy-Cons slotted into. Once the prints were completed, we set to work assembling the bits and pieces to the dumbbells. But honestly, the most impressive thing about this print was the knurling on these dumbbells. I mean, look at that. That's amazing. Once everything was 3D printed and assembled, it was time to start pumping iron. Excuse me. So with my 3D printed design, 6 to 8 weeks and 484 stars later, you yourself can achieve the physique of your favorite action movie star and enjoy every minute of it. We have now entered the "it doesn't exist and you shouldn't print it" category. This is a cup holder that attaches to your Joy-Con. In theory, it lets you hydrate mid-race. In practice, the second you fill it more than halfway, every turn becomes a physics experiment. Is it heavy? Yes. Does it throw off the gyroscope? Absolutely. Is it a disaster waiting to happen? Let's just say we call this the high-stakes hydration system. It technically works. It also technically turns your Switch 2 into a very expensive drink tray. And somehow this brings us to the classical Greek debate whether the cup is half full or half empty. This particular 3D print resolves that matter. The cup is entirely empty because its contents are now on your lap. And finally, for the competitive players who believe in winning at all costs, we remember the Wii Nunchuck. It was cute, but it lacked offensive capabilities. Inspired by that, we made whatever this is. It's a rail that attaches to the Joy-Con, a chain, and a handle, so in theory, we have modernized the Nunchuck for the Switch 2. In reality, we have made your controller actively sabotage everything and everyone around you, which is kind of the heart of multiplayer. You could try to use this to distract the people you're playing with. It's not cheating, it's aggressive negotiations. But I'm gonna go on the record here and say that this lives firmly in the should not exist category.
And as we all know, nunchucks always come in pairs.
So I spent the last 30 days designing, printing, breaking, reprinting, and losing sleep over accessories for this console. And somewhere around day 20, I thought, I think I've actually lost my mind. But here's the thing. The same thing that made me lose my mind is the same thing that brought me back. Because at the end of the day, all of this, the printing, the designing, the 4 a.m. filament swaps, it's just an excuse to make something fun. And what's more fun than this? If you watched part 1, thank you. That video went crazy. If you haven't, go watch it. Link's right here. And if you want to see what else I lose my mind over next, subscribe. I've got some big stuff coming. Hey, bad dog.